be bleeding again. And in the pine ways, we'll only be.
Just listen to that. It's so special, isn't it? If that doesn't make the very hairs prick on the back of your neck, you haven't lived. You just haven't lived. It is, of course, Wolf Moon from Type O Negative's definitive album, October Rust. An album that so very many of us cherish, one of metal's most incredible musical achievements. The band, of course, are now gone after the passing of their talisman, Peter Steele. But with the 10th anniversary of the wonderful Dead Again album just passed as we recorded this, it gives me enormous pleasure and pride today to say that nonetheless we are going to talk to Type O Negative in the form of the band's drummer, Johnny Kelly, one of the Drab Four themselves. This is the Metal Insight podcast from Metalireland, episode number 35. I'm Earl Grey. And there is a further reason this episode is going to be really special. Many of you will know that there is actually an Irish tribute band to Type O Negative. They're called Bloody Kisses. I say tribute band, I really mean labour of love, I guess. But they're fronted by a devoted fan of the band and longtime Metalireland stalwart, Muiris O'Fiannachta. Well, here's what we're going to do. Muiris is going to do this podcast today, not me. He's the fan. I'm the fan too, but he's the big fan. And in this episode, he's going to be taking the front seat and interviewing Johnny, interviewing the man who made some of the most important and meaningful music in his life. So, a tribute band leader talks to his inspiration. That's great. That's why metal rules, and that's what we're here for. So look, you guys all know and love Type O. There is no further need for any other introduction. Just a quick word from our sponsors at MCD, who have a few gigs coming up that you're going to want to know about. June is getting insane for gigs in Ireland, so you're going to want to get your tickets to Airborne. That's Tuesday the 6th of June at the Academy, Dublin. Eddie Vedder, Friday the 9th of June, the 3 Arena. Clutch, Thursday the 15th of June, that's at the Academy. Alter Bridge are playing the 20th of June, that's at the Olympia, and Gujara are playing Sunday the 11th of June, also at the Academy. Gujira, I don't really care. Anyway, thanks for that, thanks to MCD and for supporting Metalireland. I'm Earl Grey, this is the Metal Insight podcast episode 35 from Metalireland, fronted this episode by Muiris O'Fiannachta. I do hope you enjoy it. It's certainly an ambition fulfilled from our end to celebrate some of the best music that has ever come out of heavy metal.
To begin, Johnny, I suppose we have to start with the obvious question. It's coming up to 7 years now since the passing of the legendary frontman of Type O Negative, Peter Steele, in April 2010. How have those years been for you, and what does your life now involve post-Type O Negative?
A lot of ups and downs, just regular life stuff, I guess, I guess musically it's been busy at times. Last year was a slow year. I didn't really do much touring last year, but for the most part I've been staying active, with various things. Danzig has been busy on and off. I forget who I was talking to just the other day, and I was, it just dawned on me. I've been playing with Danzig for this year will be 15 years.
Do you sometimes have to pinch yourself to remind you that this is reality, that you're playing with Danzig?
No, not really. It's at this point now, it's been so long. It just feels like, regular. It's.
I suppose you've been playing longer with Danzig than you were with Type O Negative.
No, not yet.
No, almost.
Not yet. With Type O, I think I was actively in the band for 17 years.
Okay. Tell me about that. You came into the fold after Sal Abruscato left. how did that work out for you? Was it a difficult transition coming in after Sal, or did you know the guys already? Did you go way back?
Yeah, I knew everyone for quite a long time. Actually, Sal and I have been friends. I met Sal when he was like 13 years old, like 13 or 14, something like that. And we all come from the same neighborhood. Before Typo, I played in a band with Kenny for a few years. And when Typo first got together, after Carnivore broke up, and I was playing in a band with Kenny when he joined Typo. And then once in a while I would work for the band, like they had a couple of gigs that were out of town, and I would, drive, and we drove to California once, and then they had a show in Atlanta, and we did that. We drove to Atlanta, and actually those couple of trips are probably some of my most favorite ones, even after joining the band.
Lots of heady memories, I'm sure.
Yeah, those were, it was, we were a lot younger, and there was, nothing really to worry about. We were just being young and just traveling, and it's, seeing the country, and getting crazy, and that was, it was a lot of fun. So I look back on that with fondly, and there wasn't any of the like the other pressures that come with, like, being in a working band, and it didn't have a care in the world. I was like, 22 years old, 23 years old, something like that, and we were just
living it up.
Yeah, just riding in a van, and then the guys would play, and then the rest of the the adventure would continue.
This month saw the 10th anniversary of the release of the band's final album, Dead Again.
I can't believe it's been 10 years.
It's crazy, isn't it? Even though those 10 years have flown by, 10 years is a long time, and before that it had been another over 10 years before or since the release of October Rust, which I think many fans would view as possibly the band's finest hour. The band was probably in a very different place during the writing and recording of October Rust compared to Dead Again. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course. Definitely in a different place. October Rust, really. Peter, at that point in our career, he was he seemed very focused. At the time, a lot of stuff was prepared. I wouldn't say that he had songs entirely written, but he did have a lot of ideas prepared before we started working on it. After that record, when we would work on the following records, there wasn't too much prep work on his part. We would just get into a room and start, hammering out ideas, and it would just get worked out at rehearsals. We would get together. And October Rust was basically written and recorded, and we were only home for 6 months, and then we were back out on the road, which was certainly a different approach than what the later records would take. I just remember it was it all happened really fast. Working on Dead Again was just the opposite. That record took a long time. We would go to the rehearsal studio. Some points we were doing it. For the writing on that record, we would go into the studio 5-6 nights a week, every week for months.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember at one point we were working, and we were at rehearsal or whatever, and then it was starting to get closer to where we were finally going to decide, finally say this is it. The songs were starting to get worse, it seemed. We were working on them so much, just going over so many things. We were finally just that's it. it's not going to get any better. It's starting to get worse. Let's just go to this, let's book recording time, and it's time to move on. And then the recording aspect of it didn't seem to take all that long. We did basic tracks, I would say, within a week, and then overdubs and guitar solos, all that stuff, and then the vocals. And it seemed like the recording aspect of it went a lot faster than it went quickly compared to everything else that would take forever whenever we would do something.
If I have my facts correct, this was the first album which you physically played drums on, as opposed to have the drums programmed. Was that a very different part of the process for you this time around?
Different. I guess. No, it didn't seem different because it seemed like it took. I guess the creative aspect of it still is the part that that's the part that really, it seems like that's what takes a piece out of you, takes a piece of your soul away from you, is the creating part, as far as the physical aspect of laying down the tracks. Like I said, all the drum tracks were done, all the songs were completed in just a couple of days. We would go in and, when we went to the recording studio, we did a few songs a day, and we did it all live, which is, that part was different, where we all played together in a room for the basic tracks, which was something that hadn't been done in a long time. Even, when the drum program, when we were programming drums, we'd have a rough outline of the song, we would do the drum program, and then Peter and Kenny and Josh would all play along to it afterwards. And then if something didn't feel right, then we were, the cool thing about it was, if something didn't feel right, if something wasn't working, even after the guys had done their parts, we could go in and change all the drums around from under it. And this time we weren't afforded that. We couldn't do that this time. So it was whatever was there, that was it. We had to live with it. But it seemed, because we had done so much rehearsing and stuff, I definitely knew what I wanted to play. It was just a matter of getting a good performance.
Do you find that sometimes difficult to do in the studio environment compared to playing live?
Well, live is different because you're not really, I don't want to say you're not thinking as much. You're just going out there and you're doing it, and you have one chance to get it right. And if it doesn't, if you make a mistake or whatever, it's really not the end of the world, because it's, it goes by so quickly. It's really not that big of a deal unless unless it's a total train wreck where, the wheels completely fall off the bus and the whole band falls apart. But if you don't hit the snare perfectly, or if you miss a crash or something like that during a live show, it's not the end of the world. But you can't do that when you're recording. You mess up something, or if something's a little bit, too fast or whatever, you have to go in and do the whole thing over again, which, live is just, you have one chance to get it right. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you just keep moving on and, try not, you don't let it, affect you, and that's the part I hate about, I hate that part about, working on new music and, recording and stuff. It's everything is so, you're so focused on every single little note, and then you'd be that snare hit was late, this and that, it's those little things, and then it gets, you spend so much time focusing on these little things, which is that's the part I can't stand about recording, or especially with the creative aspect too, to come up, you want everything that you bring, to the song, you want it to be, the perfect thing. Like whatever, the perfect, drum pattern, the perfect feel for it and stuff, where it totally, complements the song and makes it, takes a good song and makes it a great song. You want everything that you do to be like that. And more times than not, that isn't the case. It's always like, oh, this sucks. What could be better? And you start you start racking your brain. You start thinking about different things, and you try to the hardest thing for me is to step outside of the box. Step outside of my comfort zone and approach a song differently. And then you're constantly trying all these different things until you find something that that works. And even though it may work, you still might be uncomfortable with it, but it's for the better the better good of the song. So you go along with it, and you try to make that part of you now. And that makes sense.
Yeah, and that perfectionistic streak you spoke of there, was that something that all the guys in the band had, or was it more prominent in some members than others?
I think it was everyone involved. We always felt that for the most part we weren't, and I'll say this jokingly, but at the same time there is a shred of truth in it. We always felt that we were pretty inadequate players, so we were always trying to exceed our capabilities.
On Dead Again, there was kind of a return to some of the more aggressive elements of the early Type O stuff, and even some might say Carnivore. For example, there's a really fast hardcore verse in Some Stupid Tomorrow, and yet it's interwoven with elements of almost the Beatles swinging 60s grooves and vocal harmonies, and then maybe a Black Sabbath type riff here and there. Is there a special knack which Type O had for fusing all of those elements together?
Our primary concern when we were making music wasn't so much that we were playing in a certain or specific style. It's just that whatever we were doing, we wanted it to sound like Type O Negative. That was always the most important thing. We were fortunate enough as a band to be able to go into different styles of music, so to speak. It wasn't such a weird thing where, for instance, we would play a song like Trippin' a Blind Man, but we could also use lean on other elements, more even 80s pop and Beatles type stuff, and then go to Black Sabbath feel on something. But it always sounded like Type O Negative, regardless of what we were doing.
Definitely.
And that really was to us the most important thing. We never really thought about. We would make references to stuff. I remember when we were working on the record, we were rehearsing and stuff before the lyrics were written, and we were just working on music. And Trippin' a Blind Man, we would always refer to it as the Motorhead song because it didn't have a working title or anything. That was the working title for it, because it felt like it kind of had a Motorhead vibe to it. And so we were able to weave into different things and stuff, different styles, and that we were glad that we were able to do that, because we I guess that's what kept things fresh to us also, instead of I don't think the band would have had the longevity that it did had we made Slow, Deep and Hard 7 times, or the same thing with Bloody Kisses, and it was important that was each record was kind of like a picture. You take a picture of something, and then you look back on it and you go, wow, that was that whatever this period in time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was each record was a snapshot of who we were as people, as musicians, as a band, and that's what we were at that point in time. And I think Dead Again is more of a reflection of everything that we had done up to that point.
Sure. And, some might say that Pete's lyrics on Dead Again, when you read over them and listen to the songs, they almost seem to have had a prophetic sense. Even the album title, Dead Again. Did you guys hear that, or did you think he was onto something there, or do you just think it's, coincidence? It's Pete's overall
purely
style?
Coincidence, I think. I mean, the stuff, the things that he was writing about, I wouldn't question the fact that, that's certainly what he was feeling at the time when he wrote it. But I don't put anything, I'm not really connecting any dots with, with the way the record, with what was said on the record and then, whatever Peter passing away, a couple of years later. Had he continued, living the lifestyle that he was living, then that could have made sense. But when he passed away, he was sober for 8 months, and he was looking forward to, I guess, he was looking forward to life. He was looking forward to what was ahead. He had he had aspirations, and it wasn't just to it wasn't to whatever, just be buried, like the way that he would talk about life in his lyrics.
Was there much of a difference between Pete the man, the bandmate, the friend, and Pete Steele, the legendary frontman and the witty lyricist, etc.?
I think that Peter the person, he was much more funnier in life than he was in his lyrics. He wasn't always running around just saying I can't wait to die. He was a lot of times he was the clown in the room, making jokes and trying to make people laugh and things like that. It would come across a little bit in our music, but it didn't always.
And any of us who've seen the DVDs and the VHSs would have maybe seen that sense of humour.
Yeah, I think it comes across in those things.
The child is torn from the womb unbaptized. There's no question it's infanticide. I'm guilty, so therefore condemned. Destroying angels must come to an end. Now in limbo, deprived of paradise.
Peter and Typo generally were never afraid of controversy, and a lot of the lyrical themes, on any given album were controversial to some people. One which people have mentioned to me, as I mentioned that I'd be speaking to you about the album, was the song These Three Things. It tackles, of course, the theme of abortion. How did you guys feel about Pete's lyrics in that regard, or did you guys have a say? Did you discuss the lyrics, or was it,
Usually, I gave up fighting with him about lyrics a long time ago. Because there were a couple of things where it was I remember telling him once, I forget what song it was. It was something on October Rust. And I was like, a lot of your stuff, a lot of lyrics, I was like, I get it. I understand, I can understand where you're coming from, what you're trying to say. And it's like this, I just don't get it. I was like, I don't get it. I was like, I know you could do a better job. And then he got mad. He got mad. I think he left or something like that. And Josh was telling me to shut up. And then, the next day we get back to the studio, and he goes, I've been thinking about it, and he goes, I've come up with a solution. Kenny, you sing it. So then Kenny was like, shut up about the lyrics, because if you say something, he's going to make me sing them.
Right. That was a smart tactic.
Everyone I love is dead. Everyone I love is dead.
So, but I mean, like, some, like whatever he was writing about, that's what he felt, and it was, I mean, with all of us, we would all have, disagreements about all kinds of things, but, he was a lyricist, and that's what he wanted to say, and, that's it.
And then, kind of in a broader sense, following on from that, did Pete had kind of famously reconnected with his Christian beliefs? Did you find that affected the band dynamic in any way, or
no?
Nil.
No, he never, he wasn't, he wasn't preachy or anything like that, or trying to, get the rest of us to get on board with what he was doing, or where he was going spiritually. Not at all.
So one chapter of Johnny's life closed, and another couple of chapters indeed, began. So Muiris asked first about a pale horse named Death, the band that also features former Typo drummer Sal Abrascato, and then the slightly lesser known Seventh Void, which further enlarges upon the Typo family tree legacy with guitarist Kenny Hickey.
I had just moved to New Jersey, and I had a bunch of people over for like a barbecue or something like that. And we had Sal, invited Sal over, and we were just catching up. It was like, what are you up to? And then he was like, I've been working on my own record. And we're like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I've been working on my own record. He's like, I'm going to put it out myself. He's like, it's just something I wanted to do. And anyway, he played the record. Like, he had a CD in the car, and he brought it in the house. We were listening to it in the house. We were like, wow, that's pretty cool. I was like, I had no idea, all the years I've known you, I was like, I had no idea that you could sing, or that you wanted to sing, or that you played guitar. It was like, I had no idea. And, he was doing it with Matt, who I was playing with. Kenny and I, we were playing in Seventh Void with Matt. And so I was like just talking to him about, can you do this live? I was like, can you sing and play guitar at the same time? Just in general. And at the time, I just offered to help him. If he wanted to rehearse, where he could, just practice, singing and playing, with a band. I wasn't sure what he was doing as far as, if he was going to put a live band together or whatever. And then Sal and Matt called me up asking me if I wanted to come down, come down to the studio and, rehearse and, whatever audition, see how it went. And I went, we went to the studio, we rehearsed, it went really well. And then they asked me if I wanted to join the band. And that was it. And I was, at the time, when it first happened, I was like, Sal and I, we were joking, this is pretty ironic. You have the two drummers from Typo playing in the same band together. It was certainly going to raise a couple of eyebrows. But it was, I think it was a strong showing, I think, as far as, to show that there was never any, bad blood or drama in between, Sal leaving Typo and me joining and, stuff like that. We were always friends, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But it was cool, whatever, to play together.
For sure. And you played two gigs here in Ireland with the last time the time you toured.
Yeah.
You played in Dublin and Belfast. How did those gigs go down?
Dublin was a lot better. There was definitely a better turnout in Dublin, and it was cool to be able to go there because even all the years of Typo, we only went to Ireland once, and
That was on the October Rust tour, of course.
yeah, and so like being Irish, of course, it was great to finally get the opportunity to go there. So I was really excited about going there, and unfortunately, I haven't been able to go there more. My daughter's been there more than I have.
Is she proud of her Irish heritage as well?
I think she is now, especially that like she knows that it's a vacation when she's going there. She's actually, was it like the last couple of summers she spent like half the summer there.
Whereabouts?
I forget where it is. Shannon, I think.
Oh yeah, County Clare. Very good.
I think. I'm pretty sure it is.
And do you have any memories of the time you played here at the SFX in Dublin in '97?
Was the gig in a hotel?
No, the SFX was it was basically a big old hall. You could describe it as. It was like a community centre which they used for gigs.
Okay.
But it was kind of the main one for bands who might draw 1,000, 2,000 people maybe.
I remember it being like I was surprised that it seemed like there was a lot of people there when we played there. Which, because we had never been there before or anything like that, I remember being surprised that many people were there for our first time being there.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't tell you any other details about it.
Yeah. Any plans to come back to Ireland with any of the bands you're involved with?
Honestly, I have no idea what's on deck next. I'm not really sure what's going on. I know that Danzig has some stuff coming up this year. Whether we're going to Ireland or not could be anybody's guess. I really don't know. I know that I was told that we're going to like Sweden and Finland in June. For what, I have no idea. I really don't.
How bad?
I find out all my info on the internet.
How bad? Any news on the second Seventh Void album?
Actually, the record's written. The record is written. All the demos are done, and now we're talking about recording it and stuff. I think we may change the name of the band. I think we're going to do that because it is a little bit different than what we were doing with Seven Void, and we have a couple of new. We added a couple of new members to the band, so it's still Kenny, myself, and Hank, and then we added Josepher, who used to play guitar in Agnostic Front, and now we also have another guy, Aaron Juice, who's a local guy here in New York, that he's playing keyboards and also plays guitar. So we brought keyboards back into the sound. Going from typo to what Kenny and I, in our travels, our musical thing, keyboards are back in the band. So the sound has changed a little bit. So we're thinking, since it's, everything's, new and a little different, might as well change the name. And we haven't settled on a name yet.
And can we expect a release date roughly, or time, or?
I would love to say that we would have something out this year. But right now it's baby steps, but it's moving a little bit faster than it has been, like the last few years. The last few years obviously have been slow, It's been a long time since that last record came out. But, I'm hoping that we could start tracking very soon. Because like I said, the record's been written now for a while. The record's written, all the demos are done. It sounds really cool. I mean, even for a demo, the production on it, obviously will be improved with an actual, recording. But everything that we did, the songs are really strong. I'm really, really happy with the end, with the way the songs have turned out. But hopefully, we can get moving on that, moving on it soon. I would really like to, start tracking and, really, bring this thing, bring it to life, the demos are one thing, but when when it's finally recorded and all the things that you want to put on it are there.
And can we
really come to life? But for us, the way that we've always worked. Like I know that they've popped up on online and stuff. You've heard the demos of what we used to do with Type O, and they sound like the records.
Mm-hmm.
The energy. It's not just just a couple of ideas and just a couple of ideas put down on whatever tape or whatever. This is it was like making the whole record, and then you go back in and just reproduce what you've already done, but you're doing it in a better facility.
And
I kind of have the same expectations, with this record.
From the description you've given there, would it be a fair?
I'm losing you.
From the description you've given there, would it be a fair question to ask if this is going to maybe sound a little bit more like the old Type O?
I would say yes. Only because obviously whatever, you have the element of keyboards in it and stuff, but there are definitely some elements that show that show our lineage. It was when we did Seventh Void, the goal was to do something different from Type O. We were already in, we were in Type O Negative, and we were playing, music, we were playing Type O music, and that when we stepped outside of Type O, we wanted to do something different, something that was a little more, I guess rock oriented, more classic rock.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like, what's the point of doing something that sounded like Type O? It was, we were already in Type O. If we wanted to be, play music that sounded like Type O, we just do that with Type O Negative. Why would you go with a bunch of different guys in a different environment and stuff and play the same kind of music?
Maybe
it didn't really make sense to us. We wanted to do something that was just classic, like a classic rock thing, just guitar, bass, and drums, and with some screaming on top of it. And now that Type O is gone, there are elements of that music that like the both of us really missed. And I've been telling Kenny that for a while. We were working on new songs, and it was we were just saying that these things, those elements musically that Type O had that weren't there anymore, and it wasn't in my life anymore. I missed that. So we brought some of it back. You can't do something that's just extreme, blatant ripoff. That wouldn't be cool either. But I think it's more or less embracing, who we are, where we came from, and letting that our past, get into our current music a little bit.
Maybe as a natural follow-on from that question, and we might kind of wrap it up, was it an immediate decision for you guys when news came to you of Pete's passing, that was it with Type O, that you wouldn't, for example, try and, seek out a replacement for Pete?
Yeah, was pretty obvious. It wasn't like, we didn't have we didn't, like, the three of us didn't sit down and, have a conversation and say, okay, what are we going to do with the band from this point on? It wasn't like that. We all just knew right away that, how can you continue Type O without Peter? It wasn't even we didn't have any discussion about that at all. There wasn't a debate of any sorts. It was just, that's, that part of our life is over. And then it was just a matter of, all right, what are you going to do with yourself now? that was it,
Well, on behalf of all Type O fans around the world, I'm sure, but certainly in Ireland, I'd like to thank you so much for the music which you gave us. And,
thanks. I'm thankful.
Well, you sure left behind a legacy.
For better or worse. Looking back on it, it's cool to see that, we made a mark. It's to me that's impressive. I'm very proud of it. Living it at the time, you always life is different. The perception of how things are or whatever. It's different when you're in it and it's and it's moving along and you don't take steps to reflect on anything. You just keep on moving ahead. You're just doing your thing. But then when it's over, then it's like, wow, we did something, and that, to me that was. I guess that's the most impressive thing. Here it is, 2017. We're still talking about the band. People want to talk about it. People are still interested in it, and that's, to me, that's great. That's the proof right there. That we were onto something, and it was different. Especially given the time, where the band really made its mark. What else was going on in the world of music or whatever. We always felt that we were we were the band where you were trying to fit, a square peg into a round hole. We never really fit in with anything. We were just out there just doing our thing, and it was cool. And it's great to see that, people are still discovering it, and that it, that it had an impact on people.
Well, it must have had an impact if 4 Irish people all the way across the Atlantic started up a tribute band.
Yeah, you see, that's impressive. That to me, that's really cool.
Does it take a minute to get used to that, to the fact that someone has a tribute band to your band?
Honestly, those are some of the stuff where I never really to try to take a step back, or took a step back and try to look at it from the outside and say, wow, people are playing our music. Once in a while I'll see something online where somebody's trying to start a tribute band or something. One of the studios that Kenny and I rehearse at here in New York. They have a board with all business cards on it, or want ads and things like that. And we saw one where it was somebody wanted to start a tribute band in Staten Island where we rehearsed. And Kenny and I were I turned around to Kenny, I was we should call him.
That's probably the greatest case I've ever heard of life imitating art, imitating life.
It's they're looking for a guitar player, Kenny. You should call them. Make some money.
Unholy water, sanguine addiction, the silhouettes are as wild as
Well, what about that? Johnny Kelly from Type O Negative. What a gentleman, which you can just really hear coming through that interview. Just a guy responsible for so much of the most important music to us, but more importantly, to the guy who did this interview, to Muiris, who I'm really, really thankful for tracking down Johnny, taking the time to ask him to do this and being, a good sport to do it. So thanks to Muiris for doing this interview for Metalireland. It, like I say, an ambition fulfilled to talk to certainly one of the most important bands in my life, and definitely for Muiris as well. So that was episode 35 of the Metal Insight podcast from Metalireland. Next episode, we got something really different coming up. I know I always say this, that there's something coming up that's really cool next time. This is really different, really fast, really in your face. A bit of a surprise from an up-and-coming, I say up-and-coming, they've really been around the block, but they're coming back. British band, actually, who are putting out some new stuff and are gonna really, really stuff some riffs down your throat that I think is pretty cool. So we will be, I'll keep that as a surprise, so tune in for the next episode, which will be episode 36, coming soon. For now, I'm going to play us out with the rest of Type O Negative's Wolf Moon, because it's one of the most beautiful and brilliant tracks in the history of heavy metal. I'm Earl Grey, thanks to Muiris. This is the Metal Insight podcast. Goodbye.